Right, can I welcome everyone to the meeting of the Partneriaeth Scrutiny Group, and can I particularly welcome Councillor Sam Blackhall, who's new to the committee, so welcome, and look forward to your contributions. I'd also like to really welcome Helen Morgan-Rees, the lead director, who I know pretty well as she's Director of Education in Swansea, and we seem to be following each other around at meetings. So always a pleasure to see Helen, and of course Ian Altman, Dylan Williams, and Cressy Morgan from Partneriaeth. And a particular welcome to, I guess, Andrew Owen, who's the head of Birchgrove Comprehensive School. So, Andrew, thanks for taking the time out to join us. Right, have we got any apologies, Michelle?
No apologies today.
Great, thank you. Disclosures. If there are any, can you let Michelle know when she will send out a template for completion by you? Okay. Right, the next item on the agenda we're going through very quickly here, and that is the letters and minutes of the previous meeting. First of all, the letters. Has anybody got any comments on the letters? No hands up, so I take that as all is okay, so thank you. And then the minutes, could I have a proposal that they be accepted? Yeah, Hugh, there we go. And all agreed? Great, thank you very much. Right, number 4 on the agenda. I don't think the rest of the meeting will go as quickly as this, I have to say. But number 4 on the agenda is a look at the performance of Partneriaeth Priority 2. And we decided that we would look, and I think it was Councillor Peter Black, who'd suggested it, that we look at a priority from Partneriaeth in each of our meetings, and we're into priority 2. And the lead officer is obviously Ian, and then we've got Dylan, Cressy, and obviously Andrew from Birchgrove Comprehensive School. Ian, are you going to come in first, or Helen, yes, do you need to come in at all, or?
Chair, I'm happy for officers to start without me. Thank you.
There we go. Great. Ian, down to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a case of a very brief introduction from me, really. Dylan Williams is our PDG leads in this area. So the priority 2 area is linked to educational equity, and Dylan's pieced together the report in your pack in terms of his areas of work. And as was mentioned at the start of the meeting, the feeling was it'd be good to have schools kind of talking about their experience of working with us on some of these priorities. So I'm very grateful that I appreciate how busy Andrew is, that he's spared some of his time this morning to be with us as well. So I'm going to hand over to Dylan, who will give you a summary of the work stream, and also then introduce Andrew in terms of the work that he's been doing alongside us. Deal.
Great, thank you, Ian. Just very quickly, as Ian mentioned, I'm the regional project lead for equity and wellbeing, covering the PDG. So just a very quick overview today in terms of the work that we've done as a region, looking at priority 2 in terms of our business plan. So looking in terms of this work, the aim here is to embed the principles and processes which underpin educational equity in all schools and educational settings. Our aim is the personal or social circumstances and the obstacles to achieving educational potential, and that all schools and settings have high aspirations for all learners. Within our priority, we pledge to continue to support schools and educational settings to understand how to mitigate the impact of poverty on engagement, achievement and attainment, and the key area of focus here is our work around poverty proof in the school day. Secondly, to continue to support schools and educational settings to understand how to mitigate the impact of trauma on engagement, achievement and attainment. And again, a key area of focus here is our work around trauma-informed schools. And then thirdly is our work around working with key partners to embed evidence-based universal approaches to promote positive health and well-being. And a key area of focus here is our work with Public Health Wales around the whole school approach to emotional and mental well-being, but also our work around emotion coaching. I think in terms of our work around poverty proofing, which we're going to focus on today, and very pleased to see Andrew here today from Birchgrove Comprehensive. And just for me, a very personal thank you to Andrew and his team for really taking the work around poverty proofing and running with it. And really proud to see just how much work they've done and how much difference the programme has had, I suppose, within the school. Just a quick intro to Poverty Proofing the School Day. Obviously, the report we've produced introduces who they are. Children North East are a national charity based up in Newcastle, and we're working with them really because of their expertise around poverty, their understanding in terms of their look around poverty and what their understanding of poverty within the community, but also the range and depth of work they do with a number of schools across the UK. So in terms of Poverty Proofing the School Day, it's a two-pronged approach, an intense training programme for 2 days that members of senior staff within schools attend, and then also the possibility of an audit where every single member of the school community can be spoken to and have a conversation around poverty, and what that can then produce is an audit. And I'm sure Andrew will cover a bit more about that within his session now as we look at what Birchgrove have done. So very pleased to welcome Andrew Owen from Birchgrove today. Andrew, over to you.
So welcome, Andrew, and we'd like to hear what's happening on the chalk face, as they say.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dylan, for the introduction. First of all, though, I think I've rightly got to thank Dylan, plus Alison Williams, the head teacher at Craigvelin Primary, who's one of my cluster primaries, who I can remember about a year and a half ago came and said very evangelically about poverty proofing and what a positive experience it was, and linked us up with Dylan. And the input that it's had on our school, I think, has been quite dramatic, to be honest. We've always thought of ourselves as being a very inclusive school, looking after the pupils, irrespective of ability. But I think what the poverty proofing process has done for us, and I think it really fits in with the idea of educational equity in all schools, is it's made us look at it from a slightly different perspective than we've been encouraged to for the last 3 decades. Many of us here, I'm sure, are parents, and as a head teacher, coming up through the ranks as an assistant head, deputy head curriculum, deputy head pastoral, we have drilled into us year after year the importance of 5 A stars to C, the number of A stars a pupil gets, the level 2, the level 2I, looking at the results. So in some ways it can be quite dehumanizing when you're breaking down a pupil's performance just purely into the results that they achieve at the end of 5 or however many years they are with you. And from that perspective, I feel this is the poverty proofing and the looking at educational equity. We've got to broaden that view of what a pupil is and the challenges that a pupil faces when they come to us. I know, Dylan, I've sent you through a briefing paper, a case study over the weekend, and I'm happy for that to be shared with everyone, as I am my summary notes once I finish speaking. So please feel free to have a look over the more detailed. But what I'm hoping to do this morning, just give you a flavour, really, of the type of things that we are faced with, really, as part of poverty within the school. A good little example this morning is we've just been faced with a young lad who's been with us from across the border in Neathport Talbot, and he's been with us for 4 weeks. He's a year 11 pupil. He's a looked after child, and he's come into school this morning, and he's in a bit of a state, and he's just told us he hasn't eaten this weekend because there was no food in the house. So I've just had the learning coach go over to the canteen to see if we can find him something for breakfast this morning. And I think that's a perfect example of some of the challenges pupils face. So as a school, and that's the sharp end of poverty proofing, that pupil is not going to learn today effectively because he hasn't eaten all weekend. So our first priority this morning for this year 11 pupil is not to actually educate him, it's to make him a cup of tea, give him some breakfast. We've basically gone across the breakfast club and seen if there's anything left. So rather than it being recycled, let's feed this pupil. I will find some food for him, and then we'll get him back, get his sugar levels up, see where he is by lunchtime. We'll contact the services to support this young man, and we'll see where his day goes. But I think it's important from a counsellor's perspective, Director of Education and Partneriaeth, to realise that that pupil is probably going to come out with not great GCSEs, but at least we will have dealt with the wider challenges that pupil is up against. Okay, the context of Birch Grove, for those of you who are outside Swansea, school's grown quite significantly since 2019. We've had a 60% rise in the pupil roll from 419 pupils up to 677 as of Friday. It is a growing school, but it's a small school. The maximum capacity for the school is 775. Some year groups are now full as well, and we take in from the northeast of Swansea, but also pupils from across the border north of us in Powys, but also we take a significant number of pupils in from Neath Talbot. A lot of pupils come as in-year transfers. We're averaging between 50 and 60 pupils who join us between the last week of September and July each year, and they join us in all year groups. A significant number join us in years 9, 10 and 11, and a large majority of those pupils who are joining us late to school. Very rarely will a pupil move school in year 9, 10 and 11 unless they've had an unfortunate experience in their life, educational wise or personally wise. So a lot of those pupils present poverty challenges, and also a challenge in terms of how can we support them, not just from an educational perspective, but around getting them a nice settled home life, similar to the young man that I just mentioned earlier. We take from a wide range of socio-economic backgrounds. We're generally just above 30% free school meals. It varies between about 29% and 35%, depending on the cohorts, to be honest. 35% have additional learning needs. I would take that figure with a pinch of salt, because it depends whether we move them in or off universal provision, because we're transitioning across to the new ALN provision. We have 3 specialist teaching facilities, 2 for autism and 1 for moderate learning difficulties. And I would say they are very much the beating heart of the school. Those pupils are absolutely amazing, and they bring so much more to the wider mainstream pupils. Our poverty proofing audit took place last January 2023. As a head teacher, when you're inviting a group of people in to do I'm going to use the inspection word here, an inspection on your school, and to look at it, it can be quite daunting. But if I'm honest, it was one of the positive experiences of last year, and the way it was conducted and the thoroughness was absolutely amazing. And from a head teacher's perspective, I mentioned that we very often are forced to focus on narrow headline indicators of success. 5 A stars to C, the number of A stars a pupil has, and that we need to look at those. But what I really liked about the audit was it took away a sort of veil to look at the wider pupil from across the school, and all teachers suddenly realised the wider challenges pupils face just to get here in the morning. And I'll give one example of that. Coming out of the audit, I spoke with a year 11 boy at the time because he was looking tired and a little bit dishevelled, and we'd found out he'd been sleeping on a couch for the last 4 months because of he was living in a home which had a lice infestation, so certain rooms were condemned. So he'd been sleeping on a couch for 4 months, right the way through sitting his GCSEs. So he looked rather tired. Now, only a fool would think that that young man's performance in exams wasn't impacted by a certain level of poverty or need outside the school. We can do so much, and we worked with the parents, but unfortunately, the support services around the family, it was just a situation that we had to try and manage as best we could. Okay, so in terms of looking at the inequalities, what I was impressed with the poverty proofing audit was the way it was disarming for pupils, for parents, for governors, and for myself as a head teacher. And it was very much about, we're trying to identify realistic impacts that the school can make to try and better the lives of our young people. They spoke with 23 staff, 23 school staff, from teachers right the way through to support staff, about what the pupils get. They spoke to 171 parents, 3 governors, and the really impressive point from my perspective was every single child that was in during the 3.5 days they spoke to. And they ate lunch with the pupils, they walked around, they went to extracurricular activities, and they asked them a range of questions, which was really, really positive. And we talk very much about this buzzword of taking into account pupil voice. They really did take into account and listen to what the pupils have. On the other side, from a professional learning point of view, they trained up one of my senior leadership team, Mr. Kelleher, the assistant head. He was given training and was part of the audit process himself. So moving forward, rather than Children North East having to come back and redo the audit, we have staff in school that not only can undertake a review and evaluation of the poverty proofing audit, but can also go out to support audits in other schools. And Mr. Kelleher, I think he was planning to go out on another audit to support another school within the region to undertake a poverty proofing audit. It was very supportive rather than critical, very much a solution-based approach and a two-way process. And the dialogue, I think we've all in schools been inspected from Estin from time to time. And if you get a good Estin team, then that is the impression you tend to get. It is a dialogue and it is about moving the school forward. But I think there's many of us in the bad old days before I think Estin evolved, had bad experiences where maybe it was more about holding to account and a blame culture. This was far from that. A very, very positive experience for the school, pupils, parents, governors. So what was the impact then on what we do? Well, I've coined the phrase, it made us poverty aware, because prior to the actual inspection or audit, whatever you want to call it, we were focused quite rightly on teaching and learning. We were focused on what our whole school development aims were, and we focused on well-being, but we didn't drill down to the level in looking at well-being that we were able to do during and after the audit. And I'll go on in a little bit to explain what I mean by about drilling down into some of the challenges. It also gave us a greater understanding of the impact of poverty. And, you know, when you've got a head of department who's very driven, say, to try and improve their results for professional pride, making them realise the challenges that were faced behind the scenes, that had a really, really positive impact. Okay, uniform. Some of the key areas that came out of our audit were uniform changes. And the example I would use, and this is where I think society and wider understanding of what makes a good school needs to change. When I first came to Birchgrove, I remember one parent who was considering bringing their child to us back in 2016 saying, well, your uniform's not very smart, is it? You know, and that seeing a uniform that's quite simplistic, not blazered, not wearing a tie, as a sign that that must be a poorer school than a school that maybe has those type of items. Our uniform has always been very simple, and even pre-poverty proofing, we keep it simple, and I'm quite liberal with what we expect. It's one branded item, it's a polo shirt, a burgundy polo shirt. We allow black hoodies because pupils otherwise don't wear coats, so we want something that they feel comfortable with. Black bottoms, that includes leggings, skirts, trousers, and general black footwear. And if they've got some white in them, I really don't mind. We try to keep our uniform as simple as possible, and just to allow parents to be able to double up. A number of the pupils coming out of the poverty proofing audit, it became clear that their black trainers that they wear to school, that's their footwear. They don't have many other pairs of footwear to swap into. And when we raised this with staff, you could see staff opening their eyes, realizing very quickly that maybe we need to look at this a bit further. What we've done, we've got a pastoral team. I buy black leggings, black trousers, and other items. We do have certain grants, so period dignity grants, and we tend to try and use that sensibly for items that the young ladies will use. Black leggings, black trousers. we will buy those for pupils because we're well aware that there are some pupils, particularly in year transfers, that there is a problem there. So we try to support in that area. Another point that we became very apparent from us was that the link to poverty and ready for learning is they're not separate. And we were expecting pupils to come in, be ready to learn. And as I said about this young man this morning, and they may not have eaten for 2 days, or they may have eaten very poor food or little food. And it became very clear that there were simple barriers that were pens, equipment. We buy stocks for departments. So there's no minor disruption of debating with a child, why haven't you got your equipment? Where's your pen? We just give pupils equipment. There are genuine cases now, because we live in a digital age, where a pupil will say, I have not got a pen in the house. But if they said that 20 years ago, you'd think you're having a laugh. Of course you've got a pen in the house. They haven't got pens in the house because pupils' families can live on digital devices. Another thing became apparent is you cannot make assumptions. A pupil may have a new iPhone, but many families live on the Never Never. And a lot of, I've got my third daughter's hand-me-down phone, but a lot of pupils may have a brand new iPhone, but that's no indicator of poverty, because a lot of it is on tick, on debt. And come Christmas, some of our most poverty affected families are some of our most desperate to try and give their children everything. So it's very important, I feel, when you do a poverty proofing audit like this, not to be judgmental and recognise some of the wider issues that our families are facing. In terms of what else we do, our pastoral team, we've set up what we call a Take What You Need trolley, which is a trolley we've got 2 pastoral rooms, Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, 2 ladies that work in both, and they, to use a Welsh term, it's their job to give the pupils a cwtch where needed, to put an arm around them when they're having a bad day or they have issues, just like the young man I mentioned earlier. And we've got Take What You Need trolleys, and on these trolleys, there's products, and it's literally a very sort of out of the way, so it's not in your face. But on that trolley, we've got travel deodorants, travel shampoos, toothpaste, toothbrush, just very basic items that we might think are taken for granted. And there's a small but significant number of pupils that weekly come in and take some of the small travel shampoos. Now, I know it's not just being used for that young lady, a young lady who's 15 now, but it's being used for the family. And, you know, I would have thought that the auditors were fit, because I'm not using my resources just for that pupil. But that means that family has the basics that mean that that young lady can come to school without fear of any comments about her personal hygiene. And also it's built up her self-esteem. So those are some of the things that we've been doing. Another key area we looked at was canteen facilities and pupils' eating habits. The audit really, and this is where I talk about us drilling down, we always make sure that pupils use their free school meal allowance. If a pupil is on free school meals, we can check whether they're eating or not. It's encouraged us to take it a stage further. And what we've noticed is that with the sort of electronic logging of food that's bought and so on, it's quite clear that Monday and Tuesday are busy. The pupils eat a lot more on Monday and Tuesday, and we've come to the conclusion that they're basically carving up after a weekend where they may not have eaten as much. Not all pupils, but a significant amount. They eat like locusts on a Monday and Tuesday, and then towards Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there is a drift off and they eat less. So we notice it at break time, because most of the pupils will eat at break time and then just have a snack at lunchtime. But at Monday and Tuesday, they eat far more, and we struggle to get all the kids through in a 20-minute break time. Another positive thing that's come out of the audit was we realised, because they tend to eat at break time, they were buying huge amounts of food and then basically gorging it in 20 minutes. And then they may not have enough money for a second meal at lunchtime. And because it was a short period, they may not finish a full baguette, so they were putting the baguette in the bin and there was wastage. So what we've done as a result, we have cut the baguettes in half, limited the size of portions to allow them to have a early morning meal, but then have enough lunch money left so they can then eat again at lunchtime, because we're trying to basically make their money go further. It also pointed out that the free school meal allowance of £2.40 isn't really enough with the cost of canteen food. So we've tried to work with we're in the service level agreement with the local authority, just to try and make that go further, really. And we've tried to put more healthier options on, but also slower release energy foods, so that they're not getting a quick sugar buzz from a bowl of jelly, and it's better for them in the long term. School trips and events. Again, I've gone through Eston inspections where Eston would encourage us, the more trips you do, the more enrichment your curriculum, the greater enhanced curriculum, and you tick that box with Eston. It's a different way of looking at it, though. The more trips you do that parents have to pay for, the more pressure you're putting on families, or the more you're highlighting those pupils that simply cannot afford to go on those trips. And it's a difficult question, and it was a good debate with Children North East, and I don't know what the answer is, because we run a ski trip, but I know that ski trip, it inevitably, there's only a small number of parents and pupils will be able to afford that trip. But if we deny those pupils that opportunity, is that just as bad as not putting on that trip? So what we've tended to do, to be honest, is to put on end of term trips, but we also do reward trips, which are funded neutrally. So the parents, we've looked for trips that we can run without any cost. It's a fine line to balance. Similarly, charity events, and we're coming up to the first week in November now, and it always makes me feel very difficult, this one, because morally I believe we should look at children in need. Morally, also, we've got remembrance service coming up and the poppies and selling poppies around the school. But those two events are within 6 days of each other. And effectively, you could, and if you do a cake sale, if you do children in need, fancy dress, whatever, that puts pressure on families to find £2 or £3 in the first week or two of the month. And those two events come very, very quick on the back of each other. And I think it requires us as teachers, but also charity organisations, to ask that question, to stand back and say, are we asking too much of some of our families, particularly when you see what I discussed earlier, a young man who's come in and he hasn't eaten all weekend? To ask for £1.50 or £1 for a donation for children in need doesn't sound a lot if you're from a working background, maybe, but it does build up. It's really helped us raise awareness of the inequalities amongst our wider staff as well. There's far more understanding of the challenges families face. We've made great strides during COVID to make sure that digital poverty is not an issue. We've got enough laptops in the school now so that every pupil, if they need a laptop, they can take it home. Or we had 500, but our roll's gone up, so we're slightly short on that now. It is a constant battle, though. And I think the battle sometimes is with educationalists, to make sure they understand that there's more value in a school than just purely the headline indicators. It's with the financial challenges that we are facing as a school to support pupils. I would love to be able to support our most needy pupils continuing, but obviously there are financial pressures faced by schools and councils and organisations. But also it's about engaging with those families in a sensitive way and making sure that they understand that we're not there to single them out, but to sensitively provide support, provide a pair of leggings here, a pair of trousers there, just to take the pressure, particularly off the in-year transfers, which we find generally they come with a huge amount of poverty. I know I've given you a briefing paper, but hopefully that just gives you a flavour of what we've achieved as part of the poverty proofing audit. In terms of the audit, this is the actual document. I've actually placed it in, it's one of our key whole school objectives. So I think as a head teacher, to say all those positive things, I think I've got to put my money where my mouth is. And yes, I've got 3 recommendations from Estin that are in my whole school development plan, but the actual recommendations from the poverty proofing audit are there with my 3 Estin recommendations. It certainly, I think, has given a much more balanced view to the development plan for my school, and it's added to what I regarded was quite a good effort that we made with pupil wellbeing up to that point. That's all from me. I'm happy to take any questions and hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Great. Well, Andrew, can I say I'm really impressed, and I'm sure everybody is really impressed with the work that you've been doing. So really, really well done. I know that we'll have some questions, but thank you very much for that. And we'll come in with a few questions shortly. But I could see Dylan had put his hand up. And then Peter.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrew, for that information there. Thank you, obviously, for the passion that you've demonstrated there. Just to say also that across the whole region, of course, we have a range of other schools who are also taking part in the audit process. And again, we've got quite a long list now of schools who are very keen to go through this. And I think seeing the experiences of our schools in Swansea, within Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire, has really opened the eyes of other schools who now want to look at this. And I think Andrew mentioned briefly the audit report at the end. What schools have from this is a very useful document that actually can be used with parents, with carers, with wider school staff, with governors. And also just to say very quickly, what we have for Swansea now in particular, because we have reached the 5 audit threshold there within school, is a common area report for the whole local authority. So I've received that last week. So I'll share that obviously with Helen as lead director for Swansea to see that. And what that gives is an overview in terms of some of the issues in terms of schools across Swansea. And again, a very useful resource for the local authority to look at. And again, our aim is to have those for both Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire as well. And I'm sure we'll meet that threshold by the end of this year. Again, obviously, in terms of what Andrew was saying, in terms of work around equity, poverty proofing is one element of our work. And again, that focus on equity, that understanding of inequalities, that understanding of barriers to learning, is that actually if we don't get to grips with that, if we don't understand the full ramifications of the issues at home, ultimately within our families and within our carers, is that actually attainment and engagement becomes so much harder. So our work as a region is trying to ensure that we can support our schools and support our families to better understand equity and to better understand how, if we support our learners and our families, then actually engagement, attendance, attainment all becomes so much easier. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Peter.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Certainly, as a governor of a comprehensive school, I recognise a number of those dilemmas which you set out, particularly about school trips and uniform and issues which we're discussing in the school I'm a governor of. So, I think that's very apt, and I'm very impressed as well with the work which the Partneriaeth has done in terms of training to help teachers cope with that particular issue. Just a couple of questions. First of all, the impact of attendance on poverty on attendance, if you like, and how we deal with that. That is an issue I think all schools are facing, particularly post-COVID, where attendance levels have dropped. And secondly, the pupil development grant, of course, was originally introduced specifically targeted at these particular issues. The impression I get from just monitoring Welsh budgets is that in real terms that grant is dropped because they don't seem to be upgrading it in line with inflation. So I'm just wondering what the impact of that is on the school in terms of using that money to deal with some of these issues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Peter. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Black. In terms of attendance, one of the issues that we seem to find is, I'll give an example. I've got 4 feeder primary schools that feed into my school, and those pupils, if they live beyond a certain distance or the road is dangerous, they get a free bus pass. But I've got 16 other associated primaries that send pupils to me as well. Some in Swansea, some from across the border in East Talbot. And a lot of those parents, if they have a car, they will drive. Some pupils walk from down past by Dŵr of Ellinwy. Other pupils will catch a bus, and what we tend to find is that there's a significant number of pupils that come out of our catchment area that towards the end of a month, maybe before payday, their attendance will start to drift off, and we know what's happening. It's just the cost of the buses, or dad might be working shifts so they can't drop them off, and the pupil attendance will drop off. And it's a very difficult one for us then, because we work with our education welfare service. We put a certain amount of pressure on parents to try and get the pupils to school, but it's a balancing act with an appreciation that if mum has, I'm thinking of one family in Neath Patolba, there's 8 children in the house, and dad works away on the oil rigs and is coming to the end of the month, and she can get the primary kids to school, but the 2 that are with me, the bus costs are just not, something's got to give. So rather than not feed the children for the last week, the pupils might get to school late in the morning, about 10 o'clock if they walk. So it's those type of challenges, Councillor Black, that we are finding around attendance, is trying to be supportive, trying to encourage good attendance, but also some of the reasons that we're finding presented back to us about why the child isn't in school. You look at it and you think, well, actually, there is a reason. There is a reason that the parents having difficulties. In terms of PDG, I think fellow heads would say, over the years, schools have been very, very grateful from the Welsh Assembly. And I know Kirsty Williams, when she was the Minister for Education, she said no, she'd give assurances PDG would not be going. But as you said, the value of grants is dropping and some grants are going. It worries me, because the pupil deprivation grant really does make a difference for those pupils. It really does help support, particularly improving their literacy and numeracy standards, because linked to poverty, there is a link to literacy skills and numeracy skills, and the amount of interventions and support and wider well-being support you can throw around the pupils with that grant. It worries me, I suppose, in the next 4 to 5 years where we are going to go. We're all under financial pressures. It's an interesting 2 or 3 years ahead. That's probably the most diplomatic thing I could say, Councillor Black. Okay,
Can I just ask, in terms of the buses, there's going to be reductions in bus services, most probably next week. Have you actually looked to see where that's going to impact on the ability of your pupils to get to school at all?
Yeah, the problem area we tend to have is Neath Patolba, because there isn't a direct bus service from Neath Patolba Central Station to us. So it's a mixture of trains, family, friends. Some of the parents have done car shares where possible. But no, I haven't done it particularly in the reduction of the bus services. But I think it's something, because I try to warn parents when they ask to come and have a look at the school, purely because, just to make them realise. The other area in Swansea, which will probably be more of an impact on that one, to be honest, will be the pupils that join us from down towards Llansamlet, Morriston Primary, down that area, St Thomas, those pupils getting to and from us, and there's a couple of pupils come from Olfa, so Olfa's catchment, those type of pupils, I think it is going to have an impact on, possibly.
I suspect you're unique in amongst Swansea schools in terms of pupils relying on standard service buses from outside the area to get to the school. Yeah, I
think we're a little bit of an outlier on the northeast. We're up on the hill just as you leave Swansea, basically.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Carys-Jones.
Diolch, thank you, and thank you for that presentation. Absolutely fascinating. I've been taking notes like crazy here. Just one question about in the audit. How do you identify poverty? Is it on actual information of the financial status of the family, or on the prioritization within that family of getting the kids ready to learn? Because it's something that's come up with us recently, is that although there may be a healthy income coming into a household, preparing the kids for school is not a priority. So their uniforms, their food, their preparation, their shoes, their homework, everything is not prioritised as it should be. So even though it's not a financial poverty, it is an actual neglect of that priority, as it were.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I think, how do you identify poverty within pupils? For me, this is why I've increased my pastoral team. It's knowing the pupils and speaking to the pupils. I think where the poverty proofing audit helped was it widened. I've got a good pastoral team and a good set of heads a year and a good senior leadership team that know to look for the signs. The right, I need to check that out because that pupil looks tired today. Or that pupil's hair doesn't look like it's been, it looks a bit greasy. You look for those type of signs, but where the poverty proofing audit helped was all staff became very, very, very much more in tune with looking for the wider well-being around the pupils. And also, talking about, I know Councillor Black raised the issue about attendance. There's a group of parents that take their children on holiday now, or in September, or in July, and I find myself morally, whereas we should not allow it or say, oh, you can't do that, I find myself just saying to them, I fully understand. As a teacher, we get fantastic holidays, but we have to book our holidays in holiday time, and my parents can't afford that. So therefore, the parents will take their children out of school to go on holiday because it's a fourth of the price that they would pay. So it's those type of issues. But in terms of trying to signpost poverty, Councillor Jones, if I understand your question correctly, sometimes it's obvious. Just before the poverty proofing audit last year, for example, we picked up one pupil was going around the hall at the end of lunch, and this is heartbreaking when you hear it. And one of the members of staff on duty noticed that he was picking chips off plates that were left, and he was eating other kids' food that they were leaving. Now that is something that you think in 21st century Wales you wouldn't expect to see in a school. And when we dug a bit deeper, it wasn't the free school meal children. And this is the group I think that we run the risk of missing. It's the group just above the free school meal children, because those families tend to be very hard-working parents, maybe who are just above the threshold. Dad might work shifts, mum might work shifts hard, might be single families that are working, very often that are proud and wouldn't ask for help. And those type of children are incredibly difficult to try and identify when they first come into the school. This is why working with the primary schools is important, that we know who's coming through with us. But those are the type of pupils, or those pupils that have a change of family circumstances. Dad or mum made redundant. We had about 5 or 6 families when I think Ford's a few years ago withdrew from Bridgend, and there were about 4 or 5 families at that point went from being very, very, middle class, affluent, for want of a better word, where there was no issues, to suddenly being asked to survive on very little money. And actually, those families struggle most initially, because if a family has made ends meet for a long period of time, they're actually quite resilient, as long as they're asking for help. But it's those families where crisis can happen very, very quickly. And very quickly you can find that they get themselves into a bit of a debt crisis, because they still try to live at a level because they love their kids and to give them the best clothes and so on. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Councillor Sam Skirn-Black Hall.
Oh, diolch, thank you. I do apologise, I had to pop out very briefly, so I'm just catching the thread here again. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, I just froze. I just looked down, I saw my face had froze. Just following on from what you have said regarding poverty, where I live here in Tenby, obviously we still have problems. And one thing that I helped put in place last term was what we called an outreach room in our local secondary school. What we did notice was there were a number of pupils who had money for lunch on their cards and so on, but they were letting us know that there was nothing much when they got home because the parents were on the breadline, basically. So what we came to decide to do was we agreed with the canteen to any leftovers, which would normally go, they would try and keep, albeit sandwiches, anything, and also using our local food bank locally in the town would provide additional food for these children to have at the end of the day, done discreetly, so they didn't feel singled out. But it is working extremely effectively. I was just putting that out there to you as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Andrew.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on that point. Thank you, Councillor. I think one of the other problems to be aware of is digital poverty. I mean, we've got a cashless system now across Swansea where parents have to upload funds, not on an app, because the old system used to be an app. It has to be on a computer, and they have to upload money to allow pupils to eat. And we are faced with a lot of kids that come in and they say, there's no money on my finger. They say, no money on my thumb. And we're faced with that situation where pupils, what do? You either try and say, right, I will find a way of funding that. Can you please give them a meal? So digital poverty is a massive problem. And I think sometimes the systems that we work in today don't fit with the poorest families. I understand the convenience of having a totally digital system, but it does single out the poorest amongst our kids. Likewise, you know, I agree with the councillor. We are faced with that horrible moral dilemma at the end of lunch sometimes where there's food left over, and you know, the kids have all gone to class and you look and you think, all those chips, all that is about to go in the bin. And you're sitting there and you're thinking there must be, and I understand that, you know, the kids haven't paid for it and so on, but you see a certain amount does get thrown out at the end of lunch. And I think I'm really heartened with the approach that it sounds like is happening in Tenby. And I think if something is going to move forward across the region, I think there needs to be some kind of possible work with the catering systems to allow a greater common sense understanding for the poorest pupils that we can identify.
Great, thank you very much, for that. Are there any other questions to Andrew? Yes, Councillor Hugh Murphy. Hugh.
Yeah, it's just an observation. It's to echo what Councillor Skern-Blackall said. Up in Ysgol Preseli, I think we have the opposite problem. I think there's only 5% on free school meals, and it's a very rural Welsh-speaking farming community, and there is a resistance to accepting poverty where parents refuse to elect free school meals out of the feeling, well, if you're a farmer with a big tractor on the yard, that does not mean you're actually making money. And the senior staff, again, like Greenhill, will make it a mission to make sure, like you said, you can't teach a hungry child. So if a child comes into school in the morning hungry, they will take them to one side and give them adequate food to get them ready for the day. But it's a cultural situation, I think, up in North Pembrokeshire, Lan Gogledd y Bemro, where I think because it's a rural community, mae pawb yn gwybod ei gilydd, everybody knows each other, and then there's a certain degree there where the cymdogion don't like to accept. Well, I mean, and I had free school meals, as Sam knows, we did a school visit in Crymych, and back in the good old days, you had 2 queues, and I was in that queue getting the free school meal tokens, and obviously things have moved forward leaps and bounds since then, but I still think it's a different kind of poverty, and it's something that needs addressing. And yes, just to echo my agreement with what Sam said. Josh, thank you.
Great, thank you. Andrew, any comment from yourself, or I'll...
Yes, similar to what Councillor Murphy has said, we have very proud parents who we look at some of our free school meal pupils, and some of our parents will not accept that free school meal simply because they feel that it would stigmatise their child. We make, luckily now, I was a free school meal child as well, Councillor Murphy. There's not the dinner ticket that singled you out as every day, or your mum doesn't work or whatever, those days are gone. But there's still that among some parents. I'm more heartened here. I think we got good relations with the parents, and I think they do understand that. I think there's so many, they're not alone, so they're not so singled out, I think. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. If there aren't any other questions, well, I would say I certainly like the work you're doing on the school uniform front. I think that's absolutely right, that it's not so prescriptive, and I think that's really good news. And you know, the work you've been doing and sharing with us, you know, your journey as well, and I think I joined with everyone, and so we would say that we hope that lad will be okay, you know, and you know, all the very best there. But thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure you may need to escape to get back to probably a busy schedule. You're welcome to stay with us, but you know, please feel free to go, because I appreciate how busy you are. But thank you on behalf of everyone. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Dylan for giving me the chance to present. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. The next item on the agenda is the feedback from the Partneriaeth Joint Committee, and could I call on Helen Morgan-Rees, our lead director. Helen.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Mae'r cyfnodion ar gael ar wefan Sir Gar, os oes unrhyw un eisiau darllen y cyfnodion drafft. Felly fe gynhaliwyd cyfarfod o'r cydbwyllgor ar Hydref y 6 a hoffwn ni roi'r prif benawdau ar gyfer y pwyllgor hwn.
Wedi colli sain.
Sori, faint golloch chi?
Tia 20 eiliad.
20 eiliad o'r gorau, neu ddechrau unwaith eto. Dyma'r prif benawdau o'r cydbwyllgor ar y 6 o Hydref. Felly, eitem 5 yn y cydbwyllgor diweddar oedd bod y cydbwyllgor wedi derbyn cynnig i ddiwygio'r y cytundeb cyfreithiol cyfredol i gynnig a sicrhau hyblygrwydd fel bod deilydd portffolio addysg ym mhob awdurdod lleol ym Partneriaeth yn cael yr hawl i bleidleisio. Felly bydd angen i bob cabinet lleol i gytuno ar hyn yn ei cabinet unigol. Felly na'r eitem cyntaf o sylw. Yr ail eitem wedyn ni yn y cydbwyllgor oedd eitem 6, felly derbyniodd y cydbwyllgor llythyr y pwyllgor hwn, oddi wrth y cadeirydd y cynghorydd Lyndon Jones yn ddiamod. Yr eitem nesaf o ran sylw oedd adroddiad ariannol Partneriaeth. Rhoddwyd sylw at y prif faterion yn y adroddiad, sef y cytundebau lefel gwasanaeth, cyfraniadau pob awdurdod, sut mae'r gyllideb yn cael ei fonitro, incwm grant a unrhyw risgiau yn ymwneud â chyllid partneriaeth. Felly derbyniwyd manylder yr adroddiad oedd i fyny at Awst 2023 a nodwyd bod y cyllid ar drac ar gyfer cyrraedd cyllid cytbwys ym Mawrth 2024. Yr eitem nesaf oedd adroddiad sicrwydd blynyddol 2022-2023. Felly adroddiad awdit mewnol oedd hwn a barnwyd bod sicrwydd blynyddol partneriaeth yn cael y farn cymhedrol. Felly oedd hwnna wedi cael ei nodi. Hefyd, yr eitem nesaf, datganiad llywodraethu blynyddol partneriaeth.
Ti'n fynd yn dawel eto, ni colli ti.
Sori, pa eitem gollwch chi'r sain?
O, just
There we go.
cwbl o eiliadau.
Annual governance, you just started annual governance.
Diolch, mae'n flin dy fi. Felly datganiad llywodraethu blynyddol partneriaeth barnwyd hefyd bod trefniadau llywodraethu partneriaeth yn cyrraedd y farn cymhedrol a nodwyd y meysydd i'w gwella mewn cynllun gweithredu a derbyniodd y cydbwyllgor bod na faterion i'w gwella a lle roi ychydig o fanylder i chi heddi. Felly y prif faterion i'w gwella oedd trefniadau llywodraethu yn ymwneud â chreu cod llywodraethu. Yr ail un oedd cynllun dirprwyo ariannol, a'r trydydd Un oedd sicrhau bod dogfennau yn eu lle ar gyfer partneriaeth sy'n prynu gwasanaethau partneriaeth a hefyd gwasanaethau sy'n cynnig gwasanaeth i partneriaeth hefyd. Felly tair elfen ynglyn â'r trefniadau llywodraethu, a'r prif beth arall oedd angen gwella oedd cynllunio busnes partneriaeth, a fel welwch chi, mae'r cynllun busnes ar gyfer y flwyddyn cyfredol wedi gryfhau, felly i bob pwrpas eithbwyd i'r afel ar gymhellion awdit mewnol, ond mae yna rhai materion hefyd i'w datblygu ymhellach. Yr eitem nesaf o ran sylw yn y cydbwyllgor oedd y rhaglen waith arfaethiedig ar gyfer archwilio mewnol, a bydd yr archwiliad mewnol nesaf yn partneriaeth yn dechrau mis Chwefror blwyddyn nesaf 2024, a wedyn bydd y cydbwyllgor yn derbyn adroddiad yn cyfarfod tymor yr haf o'r cydbwyllgor. Wedyn, ar ôl trafod yr eitemau awdit mewnol, eithbwyd i drafod amcanion y cynllun busnes yn partneriaeth, a nodwyd bod partneriaeth ar drac i gyflwyno a gweithredu pob amcan, bron pob amcan ar gyfer y flwyddyn gyfredol, y flwyddyn ariannol gyfredol, ac erbyn Mawrth blwyddyn nesaf bydd partneriaeth wedi cyflwyno bron pob un o'r amcanion. Eitem 12 felly yn y cydbwyllgor oedd trafodaeth ynglyn â arolwg barn rhanddeiliad partneriaeth, a cynhaliwyd yr arolwg barn hwn ym mis Mehefin eleni. Nodwyd gan y cydbwyllgor bod yna nifer fechan o ymatebion, a rhai oedd wedi ymateb roedd tua 12% ddim yn barod i hyrwyddo partneriaeth ar hyn o bryd. Felly oedd hwnna yn rhywbeth i'w nodi. Ond serch hynny, nodwyd bod hwn yn gam positif iawn gan partneriaeth i ganfod barn, a nodwyd y bydde hwn nawr yn rhywbeth blynyddol ym partneriaeth, a bydde fe'n digwydd yn unol ar cynllun busnes. Felly gwelodlyn oedd yr arolwg barn cyntaf ar gyfer y dyfodol. Wedyn, yr eitem ola o dan sylw yn y cydbwyllgor oedd trafodaeth ynglyn â'r cofrestr risg, a fi'n credu bod y pwyllgor hwn heddiw a diddordeb mawr yn y cofrestr risg hefyd. Felly dyna'r prif benawdau, Gadeirydd.
Great, thank you very much, Helen. Are there any questions to the lead director? No hands up, so thank you very much, Helen. And we move very smoothly on to the next item on the agenda, which is the updated risk profile, which you alluded to in your address. Ian, I think you were going to lead on that as well as Helen. Ian.
Just a brief summary. The report is in your pack with the the latest risk profile for the region. The document's been updated since the last time I came and presented at our joint scrutiny panel in the summer, simply to reflect the slightly amended version of the business plan in terms of our priorities. And we discussed that at the end of the last meeting in terms of why the profile had changed slightly in terms of our business plan priorities. So that in the risk register, the two areas of medium probability and high impact continue to be the timeliness of Welsh Government funding. And again, we've discussed this as a group in terms of the risk for the organisation of grant funding and that reliance on that. And the other one is the lack of clarity regarding functions of Partneriaeth moving forward. We're still a relatively young organisation, and having done the stakeholder survey in the summer, where there was generally positive feedback, one of the areas that again we need to be a little bit clearer on in terms of what our core functions are. And I think the business plan has helped with that. The register continues to have that narrative around the risk with curriculum for Wales, and that strengthened comment is in there, and risk 2, which is linked to Partneriaeth supporting local authority inspections, that risk has been reduced in the light of all three of our local authorities having been through either Estin inspection or re-inspection and coming through with positive feedback and a recognition of our work. So that's where we are with the current risk register, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions to Ian? And Helen, do you want to add anything to that?
Diolch Cadeirydd, dim ond i nodi falle o ystyried bod yna rhai materion o ran llywodraethu partneriaeth i wella arnyn nhw, a bod ni ddim wedi cwblhau rheini eto. Falle bydde fe'n werth i ni edrych ar sut i ni'n disgrifio risg ar gyfer llywodraethu ar hyn o bryd. Mae fe'n cael ei ddisgrifio fel rhywbeth sy'n a dim problem, a dim materion yn codi, ond efallai bydde angen i ni ddiwygio'r asesiad risg hynny tan bod ni'n gweithredu yn llwyr ar argymhellion yr awdit mewnol.
Okay, fine, thanks. We need to take that on board. Any questions? No. Yes, Councillor Hugh Murphy.
If we talk about risk, I'm just asking, is there any financial risk to education, Welsh language education provision as a result of the Welsh Government announcement last week, where they're moving money away from education towards the NHS and Transport for Wales? And is that potentially going to impact upon us in Partneriaeth, never mind in the wider sense of education within Wales? But I know it's not a question that really can be answered here today. I'm just making the observation, really. Thank you, George.
Great, thank you, Hugh. Helen.
Dim ond i nodi bod ni'n deall mwy am y flwyddyn ariannol gyfredol a llai am y flwyddyn ariannol sydd i ddod ynglyn ag addysg, felly mae'n rhy gynnar i weld beth yw'r darlun ar gyfer y dyfodol.
Iawn, George, am hwnna, os ydyn neb yn gwybod, fes ni gyd yn gwybod hynna, fydd ni'n gyfoethog iawn, George.
Great, thanks. Yeah, there's no comment to that, but great, thank you, Hugh. The next item then on the agenda is an update on the curriculum for Wales.
Diolch, Chair. It's just I'm going to just introduce this this task again. In your packs, you've got a report on curriculum for Wales, and obviously you'll be aware that all primary settings and around half secondary settings adopted curriculum for Wales in September 2022, with all schools having adopted since September 2023. The report in the pack gives you an overarching narrative really on regional support for curriculum for Wales, but also an overview of where we are in terms of curriculum requirements and expectations, some of the challenges around progression and assessments moving forward, a summary of where we are with cluster working, and also some detail there of some of our schools and needing additional support and what that looks like in terms of our regional provision. So Cressy is also here with me today. She's overseen and developed our professional learning offer that is the universal offer for all schools. And obviously you'll see that the report is quite a high-level report, understandably, because we're still in the early phases. And in terms of the impact of our work, you can see practitioner response to attending some of that professional learning. What we will now see over the next coming terms really is the impact of that work in the classroom as practitioners and leaders begin to implement and review and refine the curriculum really moving forward. So the report's deliberately broken down into subheadings for you, and you've got an idea there of the regional provision and support available. More than happy to take any questions related to curriculum for Wales or subsequent questions from the report in the pack. Diolch.
Great. Could I kick off? Actually, I can't see any hands up here yet, and as you will know, and certainly Helen, it's something, the curriculum for Wales is something I hold very dear, and the fact that we need to take our teachers with us on that journey. Otherwise, the people who will suffer will be the pupils. So I think it is really important, because obviously it is less prescriptive, and therefore for some people it's their dream. and for others who may have been in the profession for many, many years, their nightmare. And we've got to hold their hands to make sure that that is that we're with the teachers. And I know that work is going on, doing that throughout, throughout. So thank you. And you will be pleased to note that in Swansea we met the cluster, the comprehensive school in Pontedillas, and the Pontedillas cluster of primary schools, and they spoke very, very highly of the work that and the support they got from Partneriaeth on that journey. And we sat down with them, and we got the chair of governors and the head of each of the cluster primary schools and the comprehensive schools, and it was really good to get those people into one room. It was online, but we were all there, and we learned so much, and we got it warts and all, and how they literally were supporting each other and coming out the other side. It was really interesting to see. But from Partneriaeth's point of view, gosh, a glowing report, and how you were giving them really good support, and that was great to hear. We're going to do a similar exercise in a few months with the Gowden Comprehensive School and the cluster that they have feeding into that comprehensive school, again to talk about the curriculum. And I think it was a really useful exercise with Pontedillas, because we learned a lot, and certainly and saw how they were sharing that information, and we're looking forward to the next one. Ian, you're on silent. Yeah.
Apologies.
I always say that when I do that, it's the first time I'm ever on silent. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the challenges for us is to meet the needs of the individual clusters. I think they're all in very different places, and quite a well-established cluster like Pontedillas had a very clear vision for how they wanted to work with us, and they utilised officer time very effectively to meet the needs that they'd already agreed as a cluster, really. And I think we've got similar models, but very different work going on in clusters in each of your local authorities, where we are, working on joint closure days with some clusters in order to meet their priorities, and working with individual staff and teams of staff to really understand the 3 to 16 challenge and have in-depth conversations around progression, etc. So there's lots of that work going on. I think we've moved from probably having a minority of clusters engaged to having a majority engaged in the work now. And, really the challenge that I'm putting out there to head teachers, and I know Cressy does exactly the same, is make use of us, bleed us dry effectively of the skills we've got in order to support you on your priorities. We don't feel it's our job to go in and, give schools their priorities. They've got them, and I think it's our job to work with them and develop that professional learning model that's really useful for them. And you're quite right, Chair, it's really challenging, and you've got teachers all in slightly different places and leaders in different places sometimes, but that joint working and that ability to work as a cluster in a coherent way is really powerful. And it's up to us now to continue to pull together some of these case studies that all look slightly different, because we've got 33 clusters plus a couple that cover special schools and PRUs, and they'll all have their slight differences, but hopefully we've got that professional learning offer that's available for all our schools and clusters to utilise. Diolch.
Thank you very much. Helen, do you want to come in at all, or?
No, I'm fine, Chair.
Okay, I can see Councillor Carys-Jones.
Yeah, just un cwestiwn neu sylw o ran ymwybyddiaeth llywodraethwyr ysgolion bod y gwasanaeth yma ar gael, ac oes na unrhyw ffordd o godi ymwybyddiaeth llywodraethwyr o werth y gwasanaeth yma, os nad ydyn nhw'n teimlo bod eu ysgol neu ysgolion nhw yn manteision llwyr ar y gwasanaeth.
Ian.
Yeah, yes, I think we've worked closely with our local authority colleagues really to be able to present at Governor for when appropriate, sort of explain the nature of the work. In terms of Governor support, that sits with the local authorities, obviously, but when we're requested to give that kind of Curriculum for Wales update to governors and to local authority staff, we're more than happy to come in and do that and ensure that we've got that raising awareness of this service is available. And, you know, sometimes we've got schools who probably aren't quite as engaged as we'd like them to be, or missing an opportunity slightly. I think that's the real opportunity for us to work with governors to sort of explain that we've got a service here that's there as professional learning support. You know, it's not there in terms of making judgments. It's there in terms of working with the profession to make sure that that they're developing the next steps, really. So when appropriate, we do have discussions with local authorities around governor support and explaining what our offer is, and we'll continue to do that, I'm sure.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from anyone? No. Could I recommend to other scrutiny bodies that you do actually meet one of your comprehensive schools and the cluster around that to learn about their journey on the new curriculum, and you know, find out, you know, what they're doing as well. And I think it really was really helpful to us. Could I've just got a hand up, and I should know your name, but
It's Cressy.
Cressy, sorry.
Sorry,
Cressy.
I need to put my name on my camera. It's not on there. Thank you.
Sorry, Cressy.
Chair. Yeah, if I just wanted to sort of pick up on a couple of points raised by Ian there around you know, flagging up the increasingly our role is very often we're being asked to go in as critical friends. So clusters might be meeting. So I think it's this week the Swansea Bay Partnership for cluster are meeting, and that support was brokered through their cluster link officer. So every cluster has a cluster link officer in Partneriaeth, and they're not asking the team to go in and train their team. They're asking them to go in as exactly what I just said, a critical friend with expertise and able to sort of, I guess it's that we've got to a point, the last couple of years really, around the support that we've had to provide has been that universal support on the mandatory elements of Curriculum for Wales. Unless you have that understanding of that, that's the foundation upon which you then build the curriculum that you're going to see enacted in your teaching and learning. And as we get to a point where schools have got that foundation, increasingly what we're being asked to do is provide more bespoke support. And we've already had conversations around the way the professional learning offer will evolve for next year in response to feedback from head teachers around challenges of releasing staff to come out to training. We're going to be moving much more towards a model where schools can create their own sort of pick and mix inset days with a range of workshops and support from the Partneriaeth team. So hopefully it'll be a model which does what Ian said, that we're increasingly having to do, meeting schools at where they're at, following their priorities, supporting them with their priorities, and probably reducing the number of professional learning events that schools are having to release staff to attend because of the pressures on schools budget-wise around supply and things like that. So that was just a bit of an indicator of where we're going moving forward with the curriculum support. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Cressy. Thanks for that insight. Any other questions? No, so thank you very much. But you know, certainly what I'm picking up from, I say, from the cluster we've met so far, they were, as I say, very pleased with the support that you were giving, which is great news. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is to discuss points for the letter to the chair of Partneriaeth Joint Committee. And I know that Michelle has been busy writing notes. Are there any points, and she will will draft a letter and send it round. Are there any points that you would like to certainly include in that letter? Okay, no hands up. Well, we will get that letter and we'll send it round to you for agreement before we send that off to the chair of the joint committee. So thank you. And finally, the item on the agenda is the programme. Are there any comments about the programme? No hands up. Thank you. So we obviously people are very happy with that. So thank you. Please note our next meeting is on the 26th of February 2024. So look forward to seeing you all then. And dare I say, I hope you have a Merry Christmas. It may be the first time you've heard that, but have a great Christmas in the meantime, and thank you all. And I have to say thanks to Michelle for organising this meeting. So thank you all. Have a good Christmas and see you in the new year. Bye.
Thank you.